Welcome, listeners and viewers far and wide from Veracruz to the Verrazano. I'm Eirik Gislason, associate broker and team leader of the Excelsior team at Brown Harris Stevens, master's certified negotiation expert and instructor, founder of Archway Partners Coaching, and your host of Shear Line Negotiation Mastery, the podcast bound and determined to reclaim and restore the good name of negotiation and unlock the door to value creation, win-win solutions, and the true power of collaboration and integrative negotiations. Now, Annette Simmons, the author of The Story Factor, writes, "If you wish to influence an individual or group to embrace a particular value in their daily lives, tell them a compelling story." Yes, it is story hour on Shear Line, and I am giddy with excitement. So here's the deal. When you present facts or data alone, you activate just two parts of the brain, the language center and the processing center. But when you tell a story, you activate up to 7 parts of the brain, including those responsible for emotion, sensory input, and motor functions. For instance, if you describe walking on the beach at sunset, your listener's brain lights up as if they're walking on the beach at sunset. You paint a picture of the last few steps of a courageous climb, culminating in your client triumphantly planting their flag at the mountain peak. They feel the power, the height, and the elation of that climb. And that's the power of narrative. It allows your client to mentally stimulate an experience. In sales, this matters because people buy based on emotion and justify based on logic. Story bridges the two. Stories create connection. Stories increase recall, and stories drive action. And that's why today we're exploring how mastering storytelling can transform your ability to persuade and create win-win outcomes. And to guide us, I am joined by someone who knows how to captivate an audience, James Scully, a celebrated New York City-based writer, podcaster, actor, and master storyteller whose work brings the city's hidden narratives to life. James is a graduate of Xavier High School in Manhattan and the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and he spent over a decade shaping visuals as an art director for major media companies like Condé Nast and Hearst. But these days, James wears a lot of hats, and every one of them tells a story. He's a podcast developer, radio historian, New York City historian, and audio fiction creator. He's the producer and host of Breaking Walls, the acclaimed docu-podcast on the history of U.S. network radio broadcasting. And he also writes, directs, produces, and acts in audio fiction projects, including Burning Gotham, an official 2022 Tribeca audio selection. And because James never seems to sit still, on October 30th, he's launching his latest project, The Bay Ridge Digest, a hyperlocal podcast blending culture, restaurant recommendations, local history, current events, interviews, humor, and human stories, all designed to capture the heart of Brooklyn living. And if that wasn't a full week, James also leads historical walking tours around New York City and co-hosts Breaking the Audio Fiction Forum at the legendary Salmagundi Club. Simply put, James doesn't just tell stories, he immerses you in them, and I'm thrilled to welcome my very good friend, James Scully, to the Shear Line.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here, James.
Yeah. I've actually never really had somebody lay out everything that I'm doing at the same time.
It's a lot.
It was the Gone with the Wind treatment. Yeah, it was very long.
Well, I was going to say, you must have like some access to some hidden underground tunnel in the city that gets you from place to place.
I have been in some underground tunnels in the city, actually. Yes, I have.
I bet you have. Well, I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation. You and I go way back.
We do.
As not only as good friends, but as actors. I've worked on a couple of your projects myself.
Yes, you did. Yeah, in fact, with Burning Gotham, after the opening segment, the first scene, you are the first voice that is heard after mine.
There you go.
We have the first conversation in acting there. So
that's great.
The legendary Dr. David Hussick.
That's right. Well, that was a great project to be a part of, and I love everything that you do. I love the way that you tell stories. So you're the perfect guest to have here today. So I'm going to dive right in and ask you, what is it about New York City, its people, its history, its energy that makes its stories resonate so deeply, not just locally, but globally?
Well, I think you have to go back to the beginning of New York to understand that not only was New York, New Amsterdam Dutch, but it's the only one of the major, what become the United States colonies, that is not only Dutch, but formed not for religious freedom, but for commerce. They didn't get around to building a church for the first 20 or 30 years. I should know the exact date. So people were coming here from the very beginning to make money. And that kind of capitalistic mentality creates perhaps a transient society, but also one that literally there have been more people who have come in and out of New York in the last 400 years, I would argue, than any other place in the entire world. So there are more stories to be told. Some are anonymous stories. Some are stories of hope, of loss. And some are really famous stories that most of us know, either on a global scale or a local scale. So I think that's part of it. If you ask why, some of that would, I think, be the harbor itself, the water harbor. Water as an emotional and an energetic, baptismal element. It's one of the major elements, but it's also in terms of channels and port systems. New York has one of the greatest harbors in the entire world. Relatively calm waters, deep channels, lots of piers. It's an archipelago, so there's tons of islands. You know, only the Bronx is actually connected to the mainland of the United States. So I think it has created an environment that has fostered more of everything than anywhere else. So therefore, more energy gets put in, more energy gets taken out. Not always equal, you know, those of us who live here. But I think that in and of itself, that emotion drives storytelling, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So if you're going to live in a place that naturally has more emotion tied to it, that's not to say that a small town in Montana doesn't have emotion tied to it as well. It's a different kind of emotion.
Yeah.
I think that is part of what makes New York so attractive to the outside world, why people want to come here.
I love that, and when we talk about storytelling, that idea that the stories that you tell has some dramatic action or have loss tied to them, or success, victory, failure. I mean, that a lot of times that is what drives a great story, is that there is some sort of conflict that is universal or understood by a wide audience or by a universal audience.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think the pages within the prose of your and my life novels might vary, but the general chapter titles are going to be roughly the same. And that is the case for everybody. So the outside world and the inside world, when we think of New York stories, why is Woody Allen such a great storyteller? Well, I mean, Woody Allen is very Jewish. That's not, saying anything ignorant or uncovering that. He has played into that. Yeah. But Woody Allen is very New York. Yeah. And all of his stories are very New York. And he is knowingly doing both of those things at the same time. Yeah. And it attracts two different kinds of people. It might attract a Jewish person from somewhere else that relates to that, or it might attract someone from Chicago Sebastian Maniscalco. He's an Italian-American from Chicago. Yeah. But when he speaks about his family, I am not full Italian-American. I'm an Ellis Island baby, Italian, Irish, German. I jokingly say that. But I get his parental and familial background and the ridiculousness of it, because it is not unlike the things that I've experienced. So the chapter titles might be similar, but the words on the pages underneath that might be a little different. Yeah, and the way, and that's going to lead us into the next several questions, the way that those, just Sebastian Maniscalco and Woody Allen, who you just mentioned, the way that they connect their stories to a wider audience or appeal to a wider audience in the way that they tell their stories is magical. And obviously they're very successful at the way they do it. And I don't think that they're necessarily trying to appeal to the wide audience, because I don't know that really works. After all of these, I mean, I guess I've been an adult for 20 years now, and I don't think, like a show like Seinfeld, I just saw that Yankee Stadium is having Seinfeld bobblehead night this coming month. Wow. And the bobblehead is George Costanza sleeping under his desk. I just heard a radio ad for it yesterday, and I laughed and I thought, Seinfeld has been off the air. It happened to go off the air. The last episode of Seinfeld, May of 1998, is the same day Frank Sinatra passed away. What are the odds of that? Yeah, what are the odds of that? These two New York institutions at the same time coming to an end, for one reason or another. But Seinfeld has been off the air since 1998. They're still giving away bobbleheads at Yankee Stadium. And that's like an attractive thing. And I think partly, like, you would never say that Larry David is the everyman. Right. You would never say that in a million years. So he's not trying to appeal with his neuroses to a wide base. He's just, you're building character depth, ridiculousness, all of these things that eventually you bring everybody in. These, I mean, look at, I'm on a tangent, but
Oh, go. I love it.
look at what is being put out in theaters these days. Such a large percentage are remakes, sequels, etc., because it's meant to be the lowest lift, the greatest potential return on investment with the least risk for failure.
Yeah.
So, but then then a story like Anora comes along, and of course, because it's different, even if it's the same, but it's different.
Yeah.
There are only so many stories to be told, but people don't want to obviously be told the same thing over and over again. So
I love that. I love and I mean I love the tangent because this idea I didn't know that about the bobblehead day at Yankee Stadium, but I was a Seinfeld fan. I think so many people were. When I started watching Seinfeld, I was still in Minnesota. I had no idea what the cultural local references were in Seinfeld. I had very little understanding of what that was. But you talk about George Costanza under his desk in his office at Yankee Stadium, and I have that visual, and I haven't seen that episode in years.
Right,
It's become iconic.
Right.
Yeah.
So iconic that they're giving away 18,000 of those. It's the first 18,000.
I might have to go to that game.
Yeah, well, if you can get a ticket.
Yeah,
so.
right, exactly. All right. So next question. You've built a diverse career. I mean, incredibly diverse career. Your bio is just incredible to me. From theater to podcasting, writing, and leading New York City, live New York City tours. How did your passion for storytelling begin, and how has New York shaped it?
So I come from a single-parent household. I'm an only child raised by my mom's side of the family, and I grew up in a two-family house in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Upstairs was myself, my mother's younger brother, who is sort of like an older brother, father figure. He's my godfather, 16 years older than me, my mom's younger brother. My grandparents, who were only in their 40s when I was born.
Wow.
And then downstairs was my great-grandparents, who were in their 60s when I was born. A great aunt, my grandmother's younger sister. Her daughter came along a few years later, my cousin Alexa. And a family dog. So it was a two-family house, but it was an open-door policy. And my grandmother jokes that when I was a little baby, they could easily stick me in the corner in whatever you call it, bassinet or, the little, I don't have children, excuse me. But obviously no, not the crib, the little thing that you put on the floor.
Yeah, bassinet, that's
bassinet.
good. Yeah,
okay, I got it right.
Carrier or whatever.
Right. And I was perfectly happy.
I do have kids. I should probably have a better answer to that question.
It's the first time
you have an excuse.
I will be a good parent someday, I promise. I was content being around all the dialogue-driven chaos. And I would sit with my great-grandmother. I was very fortunate. I was 24 when she passed away. So that's my great-grandmother.
Wow.
And I would sit with her. She was born in 1920. She lived on Cherry Street in the Lower East Side. She's one of 5 siblings. She's the middle child. Her parents are from Italy, but she was born here. Her father was apparently very progressive for an Italian-American at that time, or Italian immigrant. He believed in women getting the right to vote. He believed that women were equal to men in all ways. I mean, he had 4 daughters and 1 son. So, but he had plenty of friends who were not that way in 1923, literally. Of course, he also didn't believe in banks. So he kept all the money under the mattress. And when the Great Depression happens, his family wasn't ruined and he was able to buy a house in Brooklyn. But she lived on Cherry Street in the Lower East Side. And she always made it a point to say, remember, that's where George Washington's presidential mansion was when New York was the capital city of the United States. So the point being, I got a lot of these stories. We would sit, we would play cards, we would eat bagels with country crock shed spread. And I think by the time I came along, this is not an Italian word, but my great-grandmother was a yenta. And my grandmother, being in her 40s by then, was tired of the stories. But I wasn't. I ate them up. And my great-grandmother, I think, sensing that, had a different kind of relationship with me than she might have had with some of her other great-grandchildren. I'm her first great-grandchild. Some of her other grandchildren. She gave me more time and less complaints because I wanted to hear what she had to say. But that could be true all around. My grandfather and I were very close. He was 45 when I was born. He's the guy I played catch with. He took me to Coney Island in the winter and pointed out, I remember them taking down the Half Moon Hotel, which was where Abe Relis fell from one of the floors before he was to testify against the mob, or things like. So I happen to have a memory like an elephant. It is really good for storytelling and also for
Yeah.
detail recognition. But like we said at the onset, New York is a place that a lot has happened. So it isn't story number 6 told for the 43rd time. There's a lot of different stories you can hear, and I ate them up as a kid. So that is where that began.
Wow. What a fascinating answer. And I'll point out to our audience, and I'm sure that they recognize this, but what's fascinating about the story that you just told is that every moment where you want to bring us into a specific moment in that story, like when you're talking about the country crock spread, bagels with country crock spread, or when you're talking about your grandfather and hiding money under the mattress in the Great Depression, every moment in time is tied to a specific piece of that story, a unique detail, like you said, that makes the story, it takes the story from just a timeline of events to something that we're diving into. You're such a great storyteller.
Well, thank you. I when I give historical walking tours, I never give a 101 because that's exactly when somebody who's a collegiate level fan is on the tour, and they're going to say, well, thanks for wasting $35 or however much I charge for a tour. So I'm always giving these, really detailed tours, and I'm always at the same time worrying that I'm subjecting my audience to a version of A Clockwork Orange where it's Jack Nicholson in the last scene of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by the end of it,
Right.
So maybe that's a little self-effacing on my part. But I think that's also probably good to keep in your mind, that you're not just beating people over the head with information to the point where they're yelling uncle,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the fact that the stories that you tell, when you have a different audience, if you can find a way to tell a similar story or the same story to a different audience a different way, it makes it fresh for you, so it doesn't seem like you're telling a story you've told 15 times.
Sure.
And you have to remember that this is the first time that audience has heard that story. You've probably told the story you just told us a number of times. And but for us as an audience to hear that for the first time it's a testament to how well you tell a story.
Well, thank you. I think some of that is also when you grow up in New York City, and being from Brooklyn, and I went to public school until the end of the 8th grade, and then I went to a Jesuit Catholic high school, as you mentioned, Xavier High School, which one thing that Xavier and Pratt, which is an arts college, have in common is that they somehow managed to be both progressive and traditional at the same time. I couldn't explain that to you. It would take a long time for me to explain why. But people, institutions that look back on their history but understand that we're living for today and tomorrow. But anyway, the point being, New York is a rough place to grow up when you're a kid. I grew up in a house, people argued all the time, daily.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have 10 people living under this one roof, there's going to be arguments.
Multiple generations.
But, and I've explained this to other people but that was not unique to my block. Everyone is like that. So you think this is just life until you get to a point where maybe you're going to Manhattan by yourself as a teenager, and you realize, well, not quite, or to college where you're suddenly making friends with a lot of people who are not from New York City, and you realize, okay, not everybody is like this.
Yeah.
Crazy. But the point being that if you are telling a story at any point in time around other New Yorkers and you are bad at telling that story, you're going to be told, here's a way to do it. Well, that's like things like that, or you just get roasted over and over again. So you better learn to tell a story in an entertaining way real quickly. Otherwise, you're just going to get trampled and made fun of, basically. So.
Oh, my gosh. I love that. Well, on that note, that's a perfect time for us to take a short break, and we'll come back right after this.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. you need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We're here with James Scully. James, with your vast experience, what makes a story stick with someone long after they've heard it? Is it emotion? Is it the imagery, pacing, or is it something deeper than that?
Well, I think it's two things. I think, one, it has to be relatable on some general level. If I'm going to tell you a story and it's so out there that it either is unbelievable and there's no point in listening any further, take a story of somebody having a paranormal experience or something like that. There has to be a level of mundane for it to be believable and not, you're clearly just pulling from various films that you've seen. So,
Right.
I think there has to be a relatability on one level. And on another level, there has to be something unbelievable and interesting. So I think there has to be both of that.
Yeah.
Because life is that. It is the mundane mixed with, the night sky has stars in it. We see the stars, but the stars are a smaller percentage than the night sky itself. So there has to be some sort of balance for that. I think that's kind of what leads people to interest.
I like that because you're creating a level of contrast so that you ground the story in something that is, like you said, the mundane, which is something that maybe is a little bit more believable, and then then you can then create the contrast to something that is more unique or what we would consider maybe unbelievable, but because it's tied to that mundane thing, it's now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds like it. That actually could happen because I understand what it means to have that contrast.
Yeah, and history does repeat itself over and over and over again. And I don't know that it's, there are lots of slogans you can put on T-shirts and other graphic materials about if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And I do think there is some truth to that. But then there might be some sort of spiritual higher level of thinking where you say, I don't know that it really makes a difference how much we know.
Right.
We might just repeat in endless cycles anyway. Our human existence goes back, we say, to, 10,000 or, 6,500 years ago or, and it's sort of like, okay, we say, well, human Homo sapiens has been around for 500,000 years. And it's like, right, so we didn't learn to plant crops for 475 to 480,000 years of that. It seems like there must be a cycle here. I can't prove it, and it'll instantly get shot down by every mainstream Egyptologist that there is, et cetera. But it just seems logical that we are a species with amnesia, as a man named Graham Hancock would say, which he's a polarizing figure. But I think it's true. So maybe it doesn't matter how much we know. George Harrison, the farther one travels, the less one knows. So, so.
I love it. And can you walk us through your process for building a vivid, memorable moments within your story or within your storytelling?
Well, I don't think there's one process. I can tell a story, which I obviously am doing, as a moment in time where I figured something out, or at least had the inkling to figure something out. I was working as an art director, or we'll say a glorified production designer. Art director is what's on my resume. It was a 3-day-a-week job down in Lower Manhattan for Us Weekly, and this is 2018. The gossip magazine at the supermarket checkout. And that's not belittling Us Weekly. They know that's where their placement is. And they're just fine with that, I would say. But their office at the time was 4 New York Plaza, which actually doesn't exist anymore. It's been converted to luxury condos or is in the process of that.
Oh, really?
So that is Broad Street and Pearl Street. Or Water Street and Pearl Street, excuse me. And anyway, the point, if you know New York, Eastern geography, downtown Manhattan, Pearl Street's the natural shoreline.
Yeah.
And then Waterfront South have been built out through the years with landfill. Anyway, I was already making documentaries on the history of radio. But I knew I'm still telling someone else's story. I would like to figure out a New York story of my own. Now, obviously, the history of radio is deeper than New York, but New York was a production hub. Anyway, that's not the point. I was looking for a story to tell. And one of my favorite podcasts is the Bowery Boys History Podcast.
Yeah.
Greg Young, Tom Myers, I've gotten to know them a little bit. Great guys. Used to do some tours for them. It was strange when Greg Young is buying me a drink. And I'm like, I've been listening to you for 10 years now, you know,
right.
strange, you know. But anyway, thanks to the Bowery Boys, I was familiar with this fire called the Great Fire of 1835.
Yeah.
Burned the entire financial district down on December 16th, 1835. In terms of geographic landmass destroyed, larger than 9/11, the largest fire in New York history. Obviously, 9/11 buildings go taller, right? Okay, yeah. I went to the spot where the fire began on a lunch break one day because it's right down there. It's the financial district, and it was the financial district then, 190 years ago. First commuter district in the United States, where people now lived somewhere else and came down to work like we do today. The fire began just north of Hanover Square, which, if you know that geography down there, it's like off of Stone Street and Pearl Street, and then if you're walking north, it's like Wall Street is the next street up. Anyway, there's a bar there today called the Killarney Rose.
I know that.
Dive bar. I was there a couple of years ago on St. Patrick's Day, when St. Patrick's Day was a 70-degree sunny Friday. Like, who thought that was a good idea? You know, somewhere up there creating weather. Bridge and Tunnel kids were vomiting at noon on Stone Street, for real. But anyway,
sure.
To make a long story even
the
longer,
cobblestone, just littered,
just and that was me 4 hours later. But that's a whole other story. I went to where the fire began, and if you're standing there now, this fire was considered to be an accident. That was a dry goods district, the highest property value district in Manhattan at the time. New York City was Manhattan in 1835. It was that until 1898. Brooklyn was its own place. Where the fire began on a cold, frigid night where the East River was frozen solid, and because it was very windy and the firefighters had a lot of trouble fighting that fire, there is no clean running water in New York in 1835. There are hydrants, but it's not faucet systems like we think of it today. And the hydrants themselves were tapped out and or frozen. So there was really not much that firefighters could do. They actually had to blow up a path, a giant path in the way of the fire to prevent the fire from going up Broadway and spreading. That they used explosives to blow a pit so the fire had nowhere else to go. But the rest of where the burn district was burnt. There was nothing to be done. But anyway, I'm standing there where the fire began, and you're like 150 feet west of the East River. And if I turn this way and look south, you see Pearl Street and Stone Street and Hanover Square, and there's South William right there, or it's maybe Market Street, I forget. And north is Wall Street. And I thought, you know, that's funny. If you came to me and this is probably the New Yorker in me, if you came to me and said, hey, we're going to do an arson. We're going to burn the financial district down. What's the best place to start this fire on a cold, windy night in December to see that it shoots off in as many directions as possible, as fast as possible? And it could just be that I'm a New Yorker and I have a conspiracy brain to begin with. And I thought, that's really interesting. I think I have some research to do. And I didn't really know very much about antebellum New York in the mid-1830s at the time. It could have been a whoopee cushion, like that's nothing going on. It turns out it is the most wild and forgotten era in history. I cannot prove it with a smoking gun, but I can come close to proving that this indeed was an arson. And so that moment in my time, because I'm really telling a run-on story right now, but that got me to do some research. So, but it was connecting those little dots for yourself, trusting your instincts in telling a story, or at least in knowing just enough kernels to say, okay, I think I know how to research something. Because you have to know something about the thing to tell a compelling story.
Right.
You know, whether it's selling real estate or making a poster design or anything. You have to know the subject matter to make it compelling to a general audience. So that would be kind of my roundabout way to answer that. I
love it, and the way that you brought us through that, the way that you think through that is amazing, because I do believe as negotiators, as real estate professionals, a lot of our audience are real estate professionals, but negotiators in general, the idea that when you connect something that may be lesser known to your audience, or your client, to the person that you're speaking to, by then connecting something that you know well and that they know well, that there is that way to bridge the story or to make the metaphor work if it's a metaphor, by creating that gap between the known and the unknown. And you have to own the knowledge that you are imparting. You have to have a base level of knowledge of what it is that you're trying to connect through that story in order to make that story successful. So I think that's really well said, that idea of connecting the dots, doing your research, and finding those nuggets that can start to create that path to a great story.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any substitute for time and energy into things. You know, that's what's going to create a personal evolution, basically. When you accomplish something, whatever that thing is, I think there's always a sense of, couldn't I have done this like 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And but you needed to know what you didn't know, and that journey creates a self-belief that I don't think that there's any one big break in life.
Yeah.
I don't. I do think it's a series of little breaks that build up momentum, like anything else that happens in life, whether it's a fault line or something good.
Yeah.
And I think you also have to understand that there is no mastery, because there is no way to encapsulate all the Akashic record. There's no way to encapsulate all of that in your own brain. You can tap into little bits of it. So I know there's somebody out there right now criticizing me.
Yeah.
And there's not much I can do about that, but answer them in an unignorant way.
Right.
Yeah. And realize that maybe you don't know what you're talking about, and maybe there are some things you do, and it's going to add to my knowledge. And I am somebody who works in media, and I am a G-list celebrity. I can only imagine what it's like. Taylor Swift, I don't really care about her music, but I can't imagine, needing to tune out that much noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and to before we go to a break, I want to say to our audience that if you are not somebody who is adept at telling stories, if this is something that is encouraging you to become a better storyteller, that work and understanding how to create a narrative and how to tell a story is something that you can do, and it will improve the way that you connect with your clients within a negotiation, with your counterpart in a negotiation. So there's so much value to draw people in with that narrative rather than the push of data, which is usually when we're relying on data, we're pushing the story. Whereas when we have a narrative, we're pulling people in. So I love the idea of connecting the dots. We're going to go to a break, and we're going to come back with more with James Scully.
Ultimate Diamond is New York City's most established family-owned jeweler. With over 65 years of experience, Ultimate is renowned for its exceptional, custom-crafted diamond jewelry, its bespoke engagement ring designs, and its ability to source rare, distinguished timepieces. Ultimate has built a legacy of timeless craftsmanship and discretion, making it a trusted name among those who value refined luxury. Learn more at ultimatediamond.com.
Hi, I'm Dylan Pachulik, CEO of XL Real Property Management, New York's most trusted name in luxury property management since 2012. We specialize in managing individual apartments, townhouses, and rental buildings held by absentee owners. We maintain our properties with the highest standards of quality and service so that owners can choose a hassle-free approach to real estate investing. Rented or owner-occupied, we handle it all. For more information, contact us at xl-rpm.com.
All right, and we are back with James Scully. James, one risk in negotiation and in real estate sales is crossing the line from influence into manipulation or trying to convince someone of something. So you've mastered making stories engaging without losing credibility, and we've talked a little bit about that. What lessons can real estate professionals or negotiators in general learn from that approach?
Well, I think you have to know that the truth is enough. Here's another history example. The Marquis de Lafayette, famed Revolutionary War and French Revolution hero. In 1824, he was making a tour of the United States. He was one of the last still alive, because he was an old teenager, like 19, 20 years old. He was a peer of Alexander Hamilton's. he was making a tour around the United States, and he stops in New York in 1824, and it was right when Washington Square was becoming a park. It was being, it was a potter's field prior to that. Anyway, there's a hangman's elm tree on the northwest corner of Washington Square Park, and there is a point to this. And it's from the 1600s, this tree. Lafayette wrote in his diary that he saw 6 highwaymen swinging from an elm. And that's just a total lie. It was 1824 is not that long ago. If you committed a capital offense, they would have not used capital punishment means from an elm tree. There were jails for things like that. The point being, why does, at that point in time, the most famous journeyer in the United States need to embellish anything?
Right.
And, are you writing this in your diary with the understanding that somebody's going to read this later? Okay, fine. But stick with the truth. That is enough, because you said convince somebody of something. Well, who are you really trying to convince? Is it really just yourself? Because if you think you've got the goods because you believe in yourself and you are your own harshest critic, but you're also one who can compliment yourself when you know you've worked your rear end off, and this is good. And you can recognize this is good because you know when other things aren't good that you haven't made, and when you have made things that aren't good, then you don't need to embellish. Stick to the thing. The thing is what sells in the end.
I love that idea that truth is something that we need to hold on to in order to make sure that what we're doing is creating a compelling narrative that can draw our clients or our counterparts in, that can result in them being influenced or to influence their decisions. But if we start to go outside of what's true, or something that can be that can be shown as a false narrative, or something that you're just making up in order to make a point, that you're actually going to do more harm than good in that storytelling.
Yeah, and we as human beings can always sense that. Yeah. That's not to say that the truth cannot create a blinding light. There is righteousness in lots of places in history and current times where people think they are in the right because this is true. Yeah. But I'm not trying to take it to that extreme of a level. I'm just saying, when I look at Craigslist listings and I'm a trained photographer and I know all of your photos have a fisheye lens, I know that this place is smaller than you want me to think.
Right.
It's just, that's the truth.
Well, and to that point, one of the things that I am a huge proponent of, and that bothers me from a real estate standpoint is, you talk about pictures as a narrative. And it's kind of interesting that you bring this up, because when you look at someone's listing, whether it's a Craigslist listing or it's a $20 million townhouse property, and you're looking at the listing photographs or the listing video, and if those things do not connect, if one does not connect with the other and end up telling a narrative story of that property, for instance, in your example of a Craigslist ad where you have 3 pictures of 3 different kitchens, and there's French doors in one picture and no French doors in another, and you're trying to make sense of what does this floor plan actually look like? And of course, there's no picture of the bathroom and there is no floor plan. And immediately your thought is, I'm being lied to.
Of course.
I'm being told a story that is not true.
Right.
As opposed to having those pictures and that video or that floor plan connect you into something that's actually leading you down a path to go, this is interesting to me. This story is interesting. I need to know more about this.
And I don't think that what you're describing, which is a microcosm of society as a whole, I don't think that this is somehow new to election night 2016 or to the dot-com bubble burst. Being a student of American history, you realize and that's just American history. Yeah. This is just human things. We embellish. Yeah. I've been saying I'm a year older and an inch taller than I actually am for my entire life, for whatever reason. Right. It's maybe that's part of being a storyteller, that you have to monitor your own BS because you like telling stories. So it's just as easy to tell a false narrative in a compelling way as it is to just tell the truth. Right. And the truth does set you free most of the time. Yes.
And when you're telling your story for the purposes of influencing or persuading someone, then you have to confine yourself more to less of the BS and more of the thing that's going to actually compel or draw that person in, as opposed to the thing that's going to make you look bigger, make you look stronger, make you look taller, because it isn't about you. And that's one of the great things about about storytelling as a negotiator is the whole idea is creating a pathway or creating a narrative, creating a story that will end up allowing your client to trust you more, your client to listen more, your client to take action where they may not be willing to take action now.
Yeah, it's a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
When there's trust there, right? And a solid foundation takes longer to build.
Yeah.
But then you're not Milli Vanilli. You know what I mean? Like you don't have a lie in your back. And it's an old adage, but if you tell everyone a version of the truth, I'm not saying all the time, give it people, there are those people, okay, you don't have to give it to me so straight all the time. You could have some bedside manner here.
Right, yeah.
But
to have a little
right, you can tone it down occasionally because then that's a whole other thing too. But what I mean is that the old adage of if you don't tell any lies, then you never have to think about what you told somebody because there is one truth that you know.
That's right.
And you also, it's American politics is a victim of never being able to take ownership to not knowing everything.
Right.
It's not even being wrong, quote unquote, but you need to always know everything. I know the whole score.
Yeah.
Because I know everything that there is to, and it's just like, that's nonsense. Yeah. It's nonsense.
It's okay not to know something.
Yeah,
and as we talk about, there's one thing about, it's okay not, especially as a real estate professional, as a negotiator, your resourcefulness is your gold, is your currency. If you're able to find the answer, you don't have to. The more we know, as you become more of an expert at something, there's one thing that we know is true. As you become more of an expert at something, you realize that there's less that you have to know. You don't have to fake it anymore because you're comfortable with what you do know, and the rest of it, you're comfortable that you can connect the dots and get the information. And that is a freeing place to be as a real estate professional, as a storyteller, to say, you know what, I know that I know a lot about this subject, and therefore I don't have to cover up what I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, this is a slantways example, but when I was a senior in college, I had Fridays off, and I was going to school here in Brooklyn at Pratt, and two friends of mine and myself, Ethan and Sam, I'll give their names.
Hey, Ethan and Sam.
We decided to go to the Met Museum every Friday until we had conquered it. And that's a very difficult thing to do. The Met is one of those museums you go until you say, "Uncle, I can't do this anymore. It's too much sensory overload after a while."
Yeah.
But it took 8 Fridays in a row. And after that, for a few years afterwards, I didn't need a map to go around the Met. I knew my way around. And what that actually did was it opened up the museum to my consciousness in a way that had not been like that prior, because I wasn't constantly needing to orient myself. So I could now, it's just an example of being an actor, right? And you and I have done radio acting, and that is different. It's a different medium than stage acting, although it's a different medium from TV or film acting.
Yes. And
there's an element of you have time in the moment to slow things down and to think clearly. You can see when people are nervous because they speed up.
Yeah.
A sports player, a baseball player, and sports people are really good at this because they preach visualization. And if you are comfortable where you are and really with who you are, then I think you can slow things down because Pete Hamill, may he rest in peace. Now he's been dead a few years, but noted New York novelist. He said in Rick Burns' New York documentary, Rick Burns is the younger brother of Ken Burns. Yeah. I don't know what it's like to be the second most famous documentary maker in your own family. Rest in peace, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but I do believe it'll be back. But the way to tell them apart really quickly is that Ken Burns is Florentine films, Rick Burns is steeplechase films.
Okay.
But he made a 9-part documentary on New York.
Yes.
And Pete Hamill said there is no New York novel like a Dickens novel can encapsulate London at that time. The greatest New York novel is the newspaper because there are things that are going to happen on your way downtown that there's no way you're going to know about, but you need to be ready for them, and you have to know who you are in order for that to be a possibility. So I think I would imagine selling real estate in New York has its own challenges and advantages. It probably
Yes.
offers more listings, more opportunity, more pratfalls, more pitfalls, et
Yeah.
cetera. But anybody who's good at their job, one obviously has to like it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the Andre Agassi's of the world who hate tennis but are forced to become great tennis. They're few and far between.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
once you get out of school, you kind of choose your own way by your passions.
Yeah.
Eventually, I think if you're smart, I think you will know the score inside more than anywhere else.
Yeah, there's no question about it. To have that passion for real estate, for architecture, for the city itself, is something that helps a lot of real estate professionals guide their path. But I love what you said about finding that level of knowledge and expertise about something where you can slow it down, where things become slower. And that, again, tying back to storytelling, that is when you're able to build that narrative in the moment, when you're able to see the dots in slow motion and connect those dots and understand where your client is so that you can see the path they're going down. I mean, the last episode of Shear Line was with Jacob Feldman, and we were talking about logic, the other side of this coin. But the same thing is true, that idea of connecting the dots and knowing where your client's going, what the path is, and being able to see that so that you can follow on that path. Or if they need to see a different conclusion or another conclusion to that logical argument, that you can start to help them see a different path to a logical conclusion. So that idea of slowing it down is amazing. And then before we get to the lightning round, which I can't wait for, I wanted to just remark back on that metaphor of being at the Met and spending that time to learn the Met so that when you went back there, you didn't need the map. And that, I think, is something else that's really, really not ties into storytelling, but ties into our mastery or our expertise as negotiators and real estate professionals, whoever's listening to this podcast. That idea of being able to study something well enough where now you can navigate it without a map. You know where things are because you've been there before, because you've studied it, because you've taken the time to actually learn where things are. It makes everything clearer. It makes everything easier because you no longer have to be that person who's constantly looking down to figure out where you are and where you're going.
Yeah, and well, you cannot have story without logic.
Yeah.
You know, I am a highly logical, illogical person. You know, I think that's how you can wear a ton of hats.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to those details. Details are Charles Eames chairs. Details aren't just details; they're the whole product.
Yeah.
You know, and you take the Met, right? Well, the logic there is the structure, the map, the skeleton of this architectural foundation that are these buildings. You know, if you can understand that, then you see the flourishes where you didn't see them before. And in doing Burning Gotham, you know, set in 1835 New York City, I have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets with highly researched dates, events.
Yeah.
So that when I sat down and we started to build this story, I can pull from truth.
Yeah.
And historians, one in particular, got to me shortly after Burning Gotham was coming out, and he said to me, I just want you to know that I'm really happy somebody finally got the history right. And it was like, right, that's what I want. Because if you know a subject well, and within 10 seconds of you watching something, reading something, et cetera, somebody gets something blatantly 101 level wrong, instantly now I don't know what else to believe, and you've lost me forever.
Right.
So if you can get those details right, then you can bring somebody on the journey. And if I may, because I know I'm going long, but to take it to
why I have you here, man.
well, thank you. To take it to a real estate level, one thing about New York structures in general is that many are no more than third generation structures. You know, a lot of are second generation structures. I have a tour it's called Into the Wild. It is the early days of Washington Square Park and Lower Fifth Avenue, when families first started to move to Fifth Avenue in the 1830s and 40s. You have the row that's built in the Greek Revival style. in Washington Square North, but then you start going north of that. And you have these families that are still around today, the Rhinelanders, the Brevorts, the Randalls, et cetera, et cetera. And I can show people images from the 1870s and Samuel Morse had his photography studio on the roof of NYU, and there are photos of Fifth Avenue in the 1840s, daguerreotypes, but they're photos. You know, it's a different process, but still. But the point being, I can show people things and say, well, this Brevoort apartment building here, it's a second-generation building. The first-generation building was the Brevoort House Hotel. Here are some images of it because it's been so well documented. And you can take people on, and people who are on my tours, they have audible, because they can, we're standing there, we're looking at it. Here's where it is from the same position 110 years ago. Here's the same position 135 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're going to be selling real estate, you can tell people about the structure, the history, what's been here, why is this significant, why is this Hell's Kitchen, why is this, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's those kinds of stories that are built on truth and history that are going to attract a potential buyer to the area because now it means something to them too.
That's right. That's right. And that's that connection, right? When all of a sudden there's that that emotional connection to the logical structure or to the actual building, which doesn't have emotion to it, but when you can connect that emotion. So if you are out there, I'm going to move on to the lightning round quickly, but if you are out there and you want to know about a specific neighborhood, you should check out what James is doing with his tours to give yourself that connection to the neighborhoods that you're selling in, because that's a great point, adding that emotional connection. So now we're gonna move on to a fun part of the podcast that I call the lightning round. So first things first, we need to cue our theme music. Nice. All right, some air drums.
Yeah,
I love
anybody who plays the drums knows that that's nothing. You don't play the drums.
All right, so this part of the podcast, I'm just going to ask you some quick questions. These can have a one-word response, but they don't have to have a one-word response. I want you to pontificate as you like and to give us your thoughts on this. So, what is your favorite New York City story to tell? I mean, you've told a lot of them. Yeah. I may actually, we've had a lot of them. But what is another that you haven't told?
As part of my radio documentary series, stop me if you've heard this one before, but me give a one-word answer. I covered the D-Day Radio Day in full, June 6, 1944. But I did it as if I was a reporter working for CBS at the time and telling it in first-person narrative. And I think New York, June 6, 1944, might be one of my favorite stories to tell because I think it's been 81 years. Where in the next 10 years, there will be no World War II veterans still alive. I mean, process that for a second, right? These were the greatest generation, right? Growing up. And it's in the radio era. These things survive. We can go back and listen to the news, the other, broadcasts of the day. I think that is possibly my favorite of all stories to tell because the news breaks right around a little after midnight on the morning of June 6th. Yeah. The night before, Roosevelt had a fireside chat, and the night before was when the Allies took Rome. Wow. So, and Roosevelt said 1 up, 2 to go. And he knows that we're about to invade France. We're about to, Le Havre, the coastline of Le Havre. We're about to embark on this landing here. And when the news first breaks, where people are out at bars and whatever, nobody knows whether it's true or not because it's German reports that say the invasion has begun. The Allies don't confirm it for a couple of hours. So nobody knows what to think. Now, the very famous photo, we'll move on.
Well, there's so much more, and I'm sure people they're going to know this story when they go and do a little bit more research on what you're doing and these stories that you're telling. I love that. That's fascinating. I want to know more. All right, I know you're moving right now, so here's a question. What's better, moving or walking barefoot on hot coals?
I would say moving, but recovery probably takes about the same amount of time as that would. And for those who don't know, what starts as tradition in New York during British New York becomes a law in the 1810s and lasts on the books till LaGuardia as mayor in the 1930s, was a thing called Moving Day, where unless it was a Sunday, May 1st, every year, all rental leases simultaneously expired at 9 a.m. Every single renter in the city.
Can you imagine
Every
that?
single one. Yeah, like think about if you went away to college, right? Orientation week when you're moving with all your stuff. And now imagine everybody else doing the same thing in the city. Ever try to hail a cab on New Year's Eve? Talk about price gouging, right? Can you imagine trying? Yeah. And there's a famous diarist. Her name was Frances Trollope. An uppity sort of lady. And that's where the term trollop comes from.
Oh, really?
She wrote in her diary that more than one of her New York friends had bought or built houses solely to avoid this annual inconvenience. Davy Crockett was in New York during a moving day and talks about he couldn't believe the calamity that was happening in front. This is all 1830s, but this lasts on the books till right around World War II. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know how many people were still abiding by that by then, but interesting moving story. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. All right. And one more. One more before I ask where we can find you. What is one neighborhood, a New York City neighborhood, everyone thinks they know but gets it wrong?
The financial district. Yeah, people think it's a finance bro thing, and yeah, I mean the stock exchange has been there since really early on, but it's the oldest part of the city. Has some of the best bars and restaurants. I mean, you're literally 3 blocks from the South Street Seaport at the same time. But Francis Tavern is down there, one of my favorite restaurants.
Yeah, there's a museum upstairs. Which is
a great museum. Go during the day if you want to go to the museum because it's open during the day. They get that wrong. It's my favorite part of the city. And when I was working for Us Weekly, which was down there, by then I was really tired of being a graphic designer, but I never got tired of being down there in the financial district.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right. So thank you, James. It's been awesome to have you here. Your knowledge of this city and being that this is where a lot of our audience works and makes their living in real estate, the knowledge that you have of the history of these neighborhoods, but just the way that you also tell stories. It's fascinating to have you here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
I appreciate it.
So my last question is, where can our audience find you, connect with you, and experience all of the incredible storytelling you're putting out into the world?
Well, you can add me on LinkedIn, James Scully. That's Scully like the X-Files. The photo will be of my face. That's your biggest cue. There's other James Scullys, obviously. At The Wall Breakers on Instagram, for example. I'm launching a new podcast called the Bay Ridge Digest podcast. That would be at Bay Ridge Digest everywhere on social media. That's a hyper-local show. If you want to listen to Burning Gotham, burninggotham.com, available anywhere you get a podcast.
Me, first voice.
You can hear Eirik, Eirik does lots of voices on Burning Gotham. And I do tours. I guess if you go to my Linktree, which is Linktree, linktr.ee/The Wall Breakers. I only have tours up through the end of August. I haven't put anything up for September yet since I'm moving and just giving myself, but I will be doing tours in September. I do webinars, I do things like that. Not to speak out of school, but I also am very open to doing tours with real estate people, building a tour. If you want, to potentially attract potential buyers or industry-centric things. I've had people approach me about similar things like that, but fell through. And it piqued my interest when
broker owners, sales directors, managers of offices, get in touch with James. That's a fascinating way to know a neighborhood.
Yes, and last thing I would say is if you want to listen to my docu-podcast on the history of radio, that show is called Breaking Walls. It would be available everywhere you get a podcast. It's on hiatus at the moment because doing monthly 4-hour documentaries.
Well, we will put all of that in the show notes, and I'm so thrilled to have you here. So,
thank you. I'm very glad that you had me.
If there's one takeaway from today's conversation, it's this. It's that stories move people. Data can inform decisions, but stories inspire them. The best negotiators aren't just sharing facts, they're shaping narratives. They understand that every offer, every counter, every market stat needs context, and the way you frame that context can completely change the way your client or counterpart responds or takes action. And here's the secret sauce. Authentic storytelling connects emotionally. When you make your client feel seen, understood, a part of the story, you build trust. And that trust leads to better decisions, smoother negotiations, and ultimately stronger relationships. So here's the challenge for all of you. Find a story inside your next negotiation. Share it simply, share it honestly, and share it with purpose. Use your client's emotions and values to guide the way, because influence is best with a dash of empathy. And at the end of the day, mastering storytelling isn't about manipulation. It's about alignment, aligning the facts, aligning the emotions, and the human side of a deal so everyone can move forward with clarity and confidence. And that's Shear Line, everyone. As a reminder, you can support this show by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just go to getmorenetwork.com, and there you can check out all of the amazing shows on the More Network, including past episodes of Shear Line. You can find me all over Instagram at archway.partners, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Eirik the Expert. You can contact the Excelsior team at BHS by going to bhsusa.com, and you can connect with my company, Archway Partners Coaching, by visiting archwaypartnersinc.com, where you can find more about our amazing new Mighty Network community and all of the courses and modules and scripts that we're offering there. So remember, there's a key for every lock, but it's the right combination of grooves, cuts, and teeth that lifts the pins and creates the shear line. Until next time, keep turning curiosity into connection, mystery into mastery, and keep unlocking what's possible. We'll see you next time, everybody.